On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected.
Thank you to all our amazing channel members for your generous support.
Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning monarch in British history, died on September 8, 2022 at Balmoral Castle in Scotland at the age of 96. Her death was attributed to natural causes, the culmination of a long life lived at the very center of Britain's national identity and global image. In many ways, her passing was not a shock. She had grown visibly frailer in her final years, but the weight of her absence struck with unusual force. For 7 decades, she had been a constant presence, symbolizing continuity in an era defined by dramatic political, social, and technological upheaval. Elizabeth II's death reflected the challenges and values of her time. She ascended the throne in 1952, an era when Britain was still reckoning with the aftermath of World War II and the dissolution of its empire. Her reign saw the rise of the Commonwealth, decolonization, and the transformation of Britain from an imperial power to a modern state, navigating globalization and shifting cultural values. Her long life embodied a particular ethos: quiet duty, restraint, and service above self. In death, these same values were celebrated, reinforcing the cultural importance of stability in a rapidly changing world. The immediate consequences of her passing were profound. A 10-day period of national mourning followed, during which millions filed past her coffin, and global leaders attended her state funeral. Her son Charles immediately ascended the throne as Charles III, ending decades of anticipation about the monarchy's future. For many, her death marked not only the end of an individual life, but also the end of a symbolic era, the Second Elizabethan Age. The transition of power brought both continuity and questions about the monarchy's relevance in a more diverse, skeptical, and democratic society. Elizabeth II's passing amplified her legend. In death, she became a cultural touchstone, a figure memorialized not only in the rituals of state, but in art, literature, documentaries, and countless personal tributes. She came to symbolize endurance through crisis, from the Blitz generation to the COVID-19 pandemic, where her calm, televised address, "We will meet again," echoed across the globe. Her life and death remind us how leaders, even constitutional ones, become vessels of collective memory, embodying values that societies project onto them. Ultimately, the death of Elizabeth II highlights humanity's complex relationship with mortality and memory. We grieve individuals, but we also mourn eras they represent. Through statues, biographies, coins, and even cinematic portrayals, Elizabeth II is immortalized as both sovereign and symbol. Her departure reinforces how societies enshrine leaders not just for what they did, but for what they came to mean in the collective imagination. Rick Davies, co-founder, keyboardist, and vocalist of the progressive rock band Supertramp, passed away today at the age of 79. His death was the result of complications from cancer, an illness he had been battling for several years. For fans, the news marked the end of an era. Davies was not only the driving musical force behind one of the 1970s most iconic bands, but also the voice behind timeless tracks such as Bloody Well Right, Goodbye Stranger, and Cannonball. The circumstances of his death reflected the challenges faced by artists of his generation. Many musicians who rose to fame in the 1970s carried the weight of long careers filled with grueling tours, creative pressures, and the lifestyle strains of rock stardom. Unlike many of his contemporaries who died tragically young, Davies lived a long life, and his passing from illness underscored a quieter, more natural, close to a career that once thrived on spectacle and energy. In this sense, his death reflected the shifting values of an era, the rock rebels of the past reaching their twilight years, reminding us of time's inevitable passage. The immediate consequences of his passing were felt most strongly among fans and fellow musicians. Supertramp, while no longer at the peak of its influence, remained beloved worldwide. News outlets and fans across social media paid tribute, celebrating Davies' musicianship and the way his songs captured both cynicism and tenderness. His death also revived interest in Supertramp's catalog, introducing a new generation to the band's unique fusion of rock, jazz, and pop. In many ways, his passing amplified his legend. While Roger Hodgson often received public recognition as the face of Supertramp, Davies was its anchor, the man who held the band together through shifting lineups and decades of change. His death shifted the lens of history, reminding the world that without his grounding influence and creative direction, Supertramp's legacy might never have endured. Davies' death reveals a universal truth, that even those who shape culture and define eras must face the same human frailty as the rest of us. Mortality levels all, yet memory elevates. Through remastered albums, tributes, and live covers, his contributions will continue to resonate. In commemorating Davies, we preserve not only the man, but also the emotions his music awakened, proving that while artists die, their echoes remain immortal in sound, memory, and shared cultural experience. Dorothy Dandridge, the trailblazing actress and singer, died tragically on September 8, 1965, at just 42 years old. Found lifeless in her Hollywood apartment, her death was officially attributed to an accidental overdose of antidepressants, though some accounts suggest it may have been due to an embolism. Regardless of the exact cause, her premature passing reflected not only personal struggles, but also the immense pressures placed upon Black women navigating fame in mid-20th century America. Dandridge's life and career mirrored the challenges of her era: segregation, systemic racism, and the limited opportunities available to performers of color. Despite becoming the first African-American woman nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Carmen Jones, 1954, she faced persistent barriers in Hollywood. She was often denied roles that went to white actresses, and when she did secure work, it was frequently tinged with stereotypes. Her untimely death symbolized the toll exacted by both personal hardship and an industry reluctant to fully embrace her talent. The immediate consequences of her death were a wave of sorrow and regret among those who recognized her pioneering contributions. In Hollywood and beyond, she came to embody the unfulfilled promise of an artist who had shattered barriers but had not lived to see the broader breakthroughs of the civil rights era. While her passing did not immediately shift the film industry's trajectory, it did amplify her legend. Dandridge became a cautionary yet inspirational figure, a symbol of both the cost of systemic exclusion and the enduring brilliance of a performer who paved the way for others, such as Diane Carroll, Halle Berry, and countless others who followed. Her death also spurred a reevaluation of her career, reminding audiences that her legacy was not defined by tragedy alone. In 1999, Berry portrayed Dandridge in the acclaimed biopic Introducing Dorothy Dandridge, a performance that won Berry an Emmy and Golden Globe while reintroducing Dandridge to new generations. This resurgence of interest reaffirmed how cultural memory can revive and honor those whose contributions were underappreciated in their lifetimes. Ultimately, Dorothy Dandridge's death underscores humanity's complicated relationship with mortality, power, and memory. While her life was cut short, her struggles and triumphs became part of a larger story about resilience and representation. We immortalize her not only through film and biography, but also in the progress she helped ignite. Her image standing as both a reminder of past injustices and a beacon of possibility for the future. Gwyneth Powell, the English actress best remembered for her role as headmistress Bridget McClusky in the BBC school drama Grange Hill, passed away on September 8, 2022, at the age of 76. Her death, following complications from surgery, was a natural but nonetheless deeply felt loss in the British television landscape. Powell had spent decades portraying strong, steady characters, and in many ways, her passing reflected a generational shift in the entertainment world, where iconic figures from formative television eras are increasingly giving way to new forms of media and celebrity. Her death spoke to the values of her era, particularly the centrality of television as a unifying cultural force in the late 20th century. Grange Hill, which Powell helped define, was groundbreaking in addressing issues such as bullying, racism, and drug abuse. Topics rarely confronted so directly in children's programming. As the fictional headmistress, Powell's McClusky became a symbol of authority that was not authoritarian, but compassionate, representing the changing ideals of education and youth culture in the 1980s Britain. Her later passing reminded audiences of a time when television shaped national conversations about morality and responsibility. The immediate consequences of her death were heartfelt tributes from fans, colleagues, and institutions alike. Co-stars praised her professionalism and warmth, while longtime viewers reflected on how her performances had shaped their understanding of school life and authority figures. Though she was not a household name on the scale of global celebrities, her influence was deeply rooted in the cultural memory of British television audiences, ensuring that her passing resonated beyond mere nostalgia. Her death also amplified her legacy by sparking renewed interest in Grange Hill, which has since been revisited both as a cultural artifact and as inspiration for discussions about the social responsibilities of television. Powell's career, spanning beyond Grange Hill into appearances in shows like Heartbeat and Casualty, is now remembered as part of the larger story of British television's evolution from didactic programming to socially engaged storytelling. In the broader sense, Gwyneth Powell's death reveals how we immortalize figures not only through statues or grand memorials, but through the preservation of their work in the collective memory. Television, in particular, allows performers to transcend mortality, their characters living on in reruns and streaming archives. Powell's passing reminds us that mortality is inevitable, but the values and stories embodied in performance endure, etched into both personal memory and cultural history. Art Metrano, best remembered for his role as the bumbling yet authoritarian Captain Mauser in the Police Academy films, died on September 8, 2021, at the age of 84 in Aventura, Florida, of natural causes. His passing marked the end of a life that reflected both the joys and challenges of show business in the latter half of the 20th century, particularly for performers who occupied a niche in the comedy landscape of American popular culture. Metrano's career flourished during the 1970s and 1980s, an era when television variety shows and comedic franchises shaped the entertainment scene. His sudden rise to fame came from a unique comedy bit where he performed intentionally awkward magic tricks, a parody that resonated with audiences. Yet his career was interrupted in 1989 by a tragic accident. While doing home repairs, he fell from a ladder and broke several vertebrae, leaving him partially paralyzed. Though not fatal, this incident reshaped his life, pushing him toward advocacy for disability awareness and resilience in the face of personal setbacks. His later death from natural causes thus carried symbolic weight. His life had already embodied survival against overwhelming odds, a story of endurance rather than abrupt tragedy. The immediate response to his passing was one of affectionate remembrance, particularly from fans and colleagues who valued his humor and courage. While his death did not shift the trajectory of cinema or television, it amplified the quiet legacy of an entertainer who turned hardship into inspiration. His one-man stage show, Metrono's Accidental Comedy, chronicled his journey after his accident and became part of his enduring imprint. Metrono's passing highlights how celebrity deaths, even those outside the realm of global icons, shape cultural memory. He represented the everyman comic, relatable, imperfect, and resilient, qualities that endeared him to audiences. His death also underscores the ways in which figures in entertainment are remembered less for their fame alone and more for the personal courage they model, whether through laughter or perseverance. In reflecting on Metrono's life and death, we see humanity's deep connection to storytelling as a means of confronting mortality. His legacy is preserved in film, in the laughter he brought to audiences, and in the lessons of strength he shared after personal tragedy. Commemoration, whether through stage, screen, or collective memory, ensures that figures like Metrono continue to remind us of the power of humor, resilience, and the enduring will to keep performing even in the face of life's greatest challenges. Leni Riefenstahl, one of the most controversial figures in 20th century cinema, died on September 8, 2003, at the age of 101 in Pucking, Germany. Her death from natural causes closed the chapter on a life that spanned over a century, during which she experienced both adulation as a pioneering filmmaker and condemnation for her association with Adolf Hitler's regime. That her life extended into the 21st century, long enough to witness radical changes in how history is recorded and judged, added layers of complexity to the public reaction to her passing. Riefenstahl first rose to prominence in the 1930s with Triumph of the Will, 1935, and Olympia, 1938. Films that revolutionized cinematic technique through their use of sweeping camera movements, innovative editing, and grand visual spectacle. Yet her artistic achievements were inseparably tied to her role as a propagandist for the Nazi regime, which cast a permanent shadow over her reputation. By the time of her death, Riefenstahl had long been a polarizing figure, hailed by some as a visionary artist, condemned by others as complicit in advancing one of history's most destructive ideologies. Her death reflected the cultural challenge of her era. How should societies reconcile artistic brilliance with moral compromise? The immediate consequence was a renewed wave of debate in media and academia. For many, her passing did not simply mark the end of an individual life, but served as a reminder of the 20th century's unresolved struggle with memory, complicity, and the legacy of fascism. Rather than amplifying her legend in the traditional sense, her death forced reflection on the power of images to shape reality and ideology. Unlike entertainers or political leaders whose deaths often solidify their heroic or tragic stature, Riefenstahl's passing underscored ambiguity. She never publicly repented for her Nazi-era work, instead insisting that her films were apolitical works of art. This defiance only deepened the questions surrounding her legacy. Riefenstahl's life and death reveal how mortality brings historical reckoning as much as mourning. Humanity often seeks to immortalize figures through commemoration, but in her case, memory is split. Film historians study her craft, while ethicists and critics warn against separating form from content. Through this dual remembrance, Riefenstahl's legacy remains both a testament to the transformative power of cinema and a cautionary tale about art in the service of tyranny. In her death, we are reminded that memory is not neutral. it is shaped by the values and moral questions of every generation that chooses to look back. Don Williams, the gentle giant of country music, passed away on September 8, 2017, at the age of 78 in Mobile, Alabama, after a brief illness of emphysema. His death was natural, yet it resonated deeply across the country music world, where his soft baritone and understated style had become a defining sound for decades. In an industry often dominated by larger-than-life personalities and rowdy showmanship, Williams embodied a quieter, more reflective side of American values: steadiness, sincerity, and emotional intimacy. His passing marked the end of an era in which simplicity carried as much weight as spectacle. Williams rose to prominence in the 1970s and 1980s, delivering chart-topping hits like Tulsa Time, Lord, I Hope This Day Is Good, and I Believe in You. His music spoke to the everyday struggles and hopes of working Americans, offering comfort without pretense. In this sense, his death reflected not just the loss of an artist, but the fading of a cultural archetype, a reminder of when country music was grounded more in authenticity than in commercial polish. The immediate consequence of his passing was a flood of tributes from peers and fans alike. Contemporary stars such as Keith Urban and Garth Brooks pointed to Williams as a foundational influence, crediting his restraint and depth with shaping the genre's modern sound. Country radio stations revisited his catalog, while listeners who grew up with his music shared memories of long drives, family gatherings, and moments of solace made more meaningful by his voice. His absence created a vacuum not easily filled, highlighting the unique role he played as both storyteller and moral anchor. Williams' death amplified his legend by reminding the public that greatness in music does not always require volume or bravado. Instead, it can lie in the quiet power of words sung with honesty. His career bridged generations, making him a touchstone for those who believed in country music's ability to heal and unify. Reflecting on his passing, one sees how humanity immortalizes figures like Williams not only through awards or recordings, but through memory itself. Songs such as his become heirlooms, passed down through families and communities, ensuring that the artist lives on as long as the music is sung. His death underscores a universal truth, that mortality may end a life, but art, rooted in authenticity and emotion, can extend one's influence indefinitely. Williams remains proof that gentleness, in life and in legacy, holds a power all its own. Camilo Sesto, the Spanish singer-songwriter whose voice defined an era of romantic ballads, died on September 8, 2019, in Madrid at the age of 72. His death, attributed to kidney failure after years of health struggles, was a natural one, but it carried symbolic weight in Spain and Latin America. Sesto had long been regarded as one of the titans of Iberian popular music, his soaring tenor giving shape to themes of love, loss, and longing that resonated deeply with audiences across generations. His passing marked not only the end of a personal journey, but also the closing of a cultural chapter tied to Spain's post-dictatorship identity and Latin pop's global expansion. Rising to fame in the 1970s, Sesto combined classic romanticism with the theatrical energy of international pop. His hit songs such as Quieres ser mi amante, Jamás, and Vivir así es morir de amor sold millions of records, while his daring portrayal of Jesus in the Spanish production of Jesus Christ Superstar brought rock opera to Spanish audiences during a time of cultural censorship. His artistry reflected an era when music was not just entertainment, but a form of social expression, bridging tradition and modernity. The immediate consequence of his death was an outpouring of grief, with Spanish leaders, fellow artists, and fans honoring his contributions. Vigils and tributes were held in Madrid, and his music surged once more in charts and playlists, a testament to its timeless appeal. For many, Sesto's passing amplified his legend. He became not just a singer of ballads, but a symbol of Spain's cultural transformation and the unifying power of music across the Spanish-speaking world. In analyzing his death, one sees how it reflects broader values of his era. His music embodied the optimism and emotional liberation that emerged after decades of political repression in Spain, offering listeners a soundtrack for both private romance and public change. His artistry, rooted in sincerity and dramatic flair, demonstrated how popular culture could transcend borders and language. The way we remember Camilo Sesto illustrates humanity's enduring relationship with mortality and memory. His songs remain central to weddings, family gatherings, and nostalgic playlists, ensuring that his presence endures long after his passing. By revisiting his lyrics and performances, audiences continue to immortalize him, not through monuments or grand gestures, but through the quiet power of melody and the universal emotions it conveys. In this sense, his legacy proves that music itself is one of humanity's most lasting commemorations. Huey Long, the fiery Louisiana senator and populist known as the Kingfish, met a violent end that mirrored the turbulence of his political life. On September 8, 1935, Long was shot inside the Louisiana state capitol by Dr. Carl Weiss, who allegedly opposed his consolidation of power. Though rushed to the hospital, Long succumbed to internal bleeding 2 days later at the age of 42. His death was not only a personal tragedy, but also a turning point in American politics, extinguishing the ambitions of a man who had set his sights on the presidency. Long's assassination reflected the political volatility of the Depression-era United States. A polarizing figure, he was adored by the poor for his Share Our Wealth program, which promised to cap personal fortunes and redistribute income, while being despised by elites who saw him as a demagogue threatening democratic norms. His death underscored the dangers of intense political polarization, showing how passion and resentment could erupt into violence. The immediate consequences were profound. Long's passing left a power vacuum in Louisiana, where his political machine dominated state governance and it halted the momentum of his national movement. At the time of his death, he was preparing to challenge Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1936 presidential election, either as a third-party candidate or within the Democratic ranks. Without him, the possibility of Roosevelt facing a fractured Democratic base diminished, arguably securing the New Deal's continuation. Long's violent end amplified his legend. To his supporters, he became a martyr for the working class, a man who died while fighting entrenched power. To his critics, his assassination seemed a chilling confirmation of the instability his politics encouraged. Either way, his name entered the American imagination as both a cautionary tale and a symbol of radical populism. His death invites reflection on humanity's relationship with power, mortality, and memory. It shows how leaders who rise through the promise of dramatic change often face equally dramatic falls, their deaths reshaping the legacies they leave behind. Long has been immortalized in literature, most famously through Robert Penn Warren's All the King's Men, which drew inspiration from his life and demise. Statues, biographies, and cultural references continue to ensure that his presence endures. In remembering Huey Long, we grapple not only with the man, but with enduring questions about how societies balance charisma, power, and democracy. Reminders that mortality, while ending a life, often elevates a legacy.